I know that the world is an uncertain place right now, that many families and communities across the globe. And we were obviously living elsewhere as well, so we were never really all together in the same place. But whenever we had the family moments and we met up.
Buckingham Palace buried it inside a short 2-paragraph statement on February 3rd, 2026. But the reaction behind palace walls was anything but quiet. Prince William had officially become the sole owner of Green Heath, Queen Elizabeth's hidden 500-acre private estate near an ancient Roman road, land reportedly worth €37 million and protected under conservation rules. According to the February 24, 2026 report by Royal Insider Leak Channel, Princess Anne finalized the trust transfer on January 30th, backdated to late December. Then everything changed fast. Camilla's family reportedly lost the free access they'd enjoyed for years. And unlike William's billion-pound Duchy inheritance, this estate was locked inside the Queen's private will. But what exactly did Camilla and her family do with that sprawling Green Heath estate while they still had the run of it, treating it like their own private kingdom? The palace whisper that exploded. The real shock wasn't that Prince William inherited another royal property. Everyone expected that. It was the way Buckingham Palace quietly revealed Green Heath like it had always belonged to him. No debate, no explanation, just 2 carefully measured paragraphs released on February 3, 2026. According to the March 1, 2026 Palace-focused report, the statement confirmed William as the estate's sole owner, ending weeks of rumors that something unusual had been happening behind closed royal doors. And once people started looking closer at Green Heath itself, the story got a lot stranger. This wasn't Buckingham Palace. It wasn't Windsor Castle either. Green Heath sat southeast of Forest Lodge, surrounded by dense woodland and bordered in part by an ancient Roman road that historians believe dates back nearly 2,000 years. According to the February 24, 2026 Royal Insider Leak Channel report, the estate stretched across more than 500 acres, most of it protected conservation land where development restrictions were already locked tight. In other words, this wasn't land you casually sold off. It was legacy land, quiet wealth, the kind families fight over for generations. And here's where people got confused at first. Many assumed Green Heath was tied to the Duchy of Cornwall, the billion-pound estate William inherited automatically after Queen Elizabeth died in 2022. Fortune magazine explained back in September 2022 that the Duchy passes directly to the heir to the throne under a completely separate system. It's technically private income, but it functions almost like an institutional royal asset. Green Heath was different. Entirely different. According to Elle Decor's 2025 Royal Homes Guide, the property existed as one of the monarchy's lesser-known private holdings, tucked so far from public attention that most royal watchers barely mentioned it before this exploded. That distinction matters more than people realize, because once an estate falls into the Queen's personal private wealth structure, the rules change completely. The public doesn't automatically get access to the paperwork. Probate can disappear from view. Ownership transfers can happen quietly through sealed arrangements that ordinary families could never use. According to legal expert David Guest Walker in his October 2022 analysis on royal inheritance secrecy, senior royal wills are routinely sealed from public inspection for decades, sometimes up to 90 years, following legal precedent established long before Prince Philip's own will was locked away from public view. Think about that for a second. Most families fight over inheritances in probate court, where records become public. Royal estates can vanish into protected trusts, while the public sees almost nothing. And Green Heath appears to have moved exactly through that system. According to the February 24, 2026 Royal Insider Leak Channel report, Princess Anne finalized the decisive trust signature on January 30, 2026. But the paperwork itself was reportedly backdated to December 28, 2025. That detail immediately raised eyebrows because backdating trusts, especially around inheritance timing, can dramatically affect how assets are categorized and protected. The palace never publicly addressed why the date mattered so much. They simply confirmed the transfer weeks later and moved on. Except nobody else moved on. Why? Well, because by then, whispers had already started leaking through royal staff circles that Camilla's side of the family had been acting as though Green Heath would eventually fall under her influence. According to the May 2026 viral analysis surrounding the estate dispute, relatives connected to Camilla had reportedly enjoyed open access to the property before William's official ownership announcement suddenly shut everything down. Access patterns changed almost overnight. Staff instructions reportedly changed too. And honestly, you can see why tensions exploded. Green Heath wasn't just another country retreat with a few cottages and gardens. We're talking about hundreds of acres of protected woodland, secluded roads, private game areas, and land value estimated at 37 million euros. Hidden wealth on that scale creates its own gravitational pull inside powerful families. Every family has arguments over money. Imagine what that looks like when the family also happens to sit on centuries of inherited privilege, protected by legal structures most people never even hear about. Here's the thing that makes this even more fascinating. According to David Guest Walker's legal analysis, a 1993 agreement between the monarchy and the British government created inheritance tax exemptions for transfers between sovereigns and direct heirs in certain circumstances tied to royal continuity. Critics have argued for years that these arrangements effectively shield enormous private fortunes from the normal financial exposure faced by ordinary citizens. Supporters say the monarchy requires continuity protections to preserve institutional stability. Either way, Green Heath slipped through a system most people don't fully understand. And William's role in all this feels very deliberate once you connect the timeline. After Queen Elizabeth's death in September 2022, the monarchy entered survival mode. Charles became king. William inherited the Duchy. Public attention focused on titles, ceremonies, and succession optics. Meanwhile, smaller private assets could be reorganized quietly in the background with almost no scrutiny. That's exactly what seems to have happened here. Remember that detail about the Roman road bordering the estate? It actually says a lot about why the Queen may have valued the property so highly. Royal families love continuity. History layered on history. Green Heath wasn't flashy like Balmoral or Sandringham. It was secluded, old, heavily protected, and almost invisible to the public eye. Precisely the kind of estate someone might preserve for a direct heir they believed represented the monarchy's long-term future, which makes the timing of Princess Anne's January 30th signature feel even more important. Anne has long been viewed as one of the monarchy's most trusted internal operators, somebody fiercely loyal to the institution itself rather than palace drama. So when her name appeared connected to the final trust seal, people inside royal watching circles immediately understood this wasn't some casual paperwork shuffle. It looked coordinated, careful, strategic. And that's the part that changed everything. Because if Green Heath had already been quietly protected for William years in advance, then why did Camilla's side seem so comfortable treating the estate like shared territory long before the announcement ever became public? Camilla's Shadow Empire, inside Green Heath. The gates at Green Heath reportedly stopped opening for certain people almost immediately after William's ownership became official. And according to the May 3rd, 2026 viral royal analysis, Camilla was furious enough that palace staff described the reaction as red-faced disbelief. That detail matters because it revealed something bigger hiding underneath the estate drama. Camilla's family apparently hadn't been treating Green Heath like borrowed royal property. They'd started behaving as though it was already part of their long-term world. And once the details started leaking out, people finally understood why the February announcement hit so hard. According to the May 2026 analysis, Camilla's sister, Annabel Elliot, had become one of the most visible figures connected to the wider estate network surrounding Green Heath after Charles became king. Annabel wasn't just casually visiting the property for holidays or countryside weekends. Reports tied her to a Duchy-linked payroll arrangement worth roughly 258,000 euros a year, a number that immediately caught attention because the role itself sat inside the complicated overlap between royal property management, design consulting, and private family access. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Green Heath itself wasn't part of the Duchy of Cornwall that William inherited in 2022. We already know that, but the surrounding influence network apparently blurred those boundaries enough that people close to Camilla's side seem to have assumed the estate would remain informally open to them indefinitely. That assumption turned out to be catastrophic. According to the April 11, 2026, Family Feud video analysis, Camilla had already begun imagining larger future uses for Green Heath during King Charles's health difficulties between 2025 and early 2026. The reporting claimed conversations inside her circle included ideas about transforming parts of the woodland estate into private diplomatic retreat space, wellness, recovery grounds, and even rehabilitation-style facilities for carefully selected guests connected to royal charitable work. And honestly, you can almost see how the misunderstanding happened. Camilla had spent years moving from outsider to queen consort. By the time Charles ascended the throne, her family's visibility inside royal life had grown enormously compared to the early years after Princess Diana's death.
Could forget it was all taking place in the same church where, 15 years ago, they bid their mother goodbye.
When public hostility toward Camilla was still intense. Slowly, carefully, her relatives became normalized around royal events, royal residences, and royal staffing structures. Access became familiarity. Familiarity became expectation. Then Green Heath entered the picture. According to the February 24, 2026 Royal Insider Report, Camilla's side allegedly interpreted language inside the Queen's sealed arrangements as granting continuing ceremonial or lifestyle privileges tied to the estate, even if technical ownership passed elsewhere. That distinction sounds minor until you realize how royal households actually function. Formal ownership and practical control are often completely different things. Somebody else can legally own the land, while another circle still uses it socially, hosts guests there, or influences staffing around it. Apparently, that was the future that Camilla's family believed they were walking into. But William had a completely different interpretation. And the moment his ownership became public, the atmosphere reportedly changed overnight. According to the May 2026 viral analysis, invitations connected to Green Heath suddenly stopped flowing through Camilla-linked channels. Long-standing informal access reportedly tightened. Internal estate management began shifting toward William's environmental priorities instead of broader family hospitality plans. That's the part people inside royal circles immediately recognized as a power move. Because Green Heath wasn't just valuable financially, it symbolized something deeper: control over the Queen's private legacy, not a public monarchy, not ceremonial tradition, personal trust. Remember earlier when we talked about Queen Elizabeth quietly protecting assets through sealed mechanisms that most people never see? This is exactly why those systems matter so much. Whoever controls the private estates controls the influence that exists outside the cameras: retreats, meetings, guest networks, family leverage, hidden social power. And Camilla's side seems to have believed they already had a foothold inside that world. The Annabelle Elliott situation became especially explosive because it fed directly into long-running public criticism surrounding royal payroll structures. Critics have spent years questioning why relatives and connected insiders repeatedly appear inside overlapping royal contract, consultancy roles, and estate-linked appointments. Supporters argue that trust matters deeply in royal operations, especially when privacy and security are involved. But to ordinary people watching from outside, a €258,000 salary tied to circles orbiting a secretive woodland estate looked exactly like the kind of insider privilege they already suspected existed. Wait, it gets weirder. According to the April 2026 Feud reporting, Camilla reportedly confronted Charles directly after William's tighter control over Green Heath became clear. The argument allegedly centered on expectations that had been quietly built over several years, particularly during periods when Charles's health concerns intensified speculation about the monarchy's future direction. Several reports throughout late 2025 had already fueled concerns around the king's energy levels and treatment schedule, which meant succession conversations inside palace circles were probably happening constantly behind closed doors. That context changes the entire emotional temperature of this story, because from Camilla's perspective, she may not have viewed Green Heath as opportunism at all. She may have believed she was building continuity for her side of the family during an uncertain royal transition. But from William's side, the estate likely represented something that needed protecting before informal influence became permanent entitlement. And families do this all the time, just on smaller scales. A grandmother dies. One branch of the family slowly starts acting like the lake house already belongs to them because they visit more often. Somebody else assumes helping with maintenance means future ownership. Another relative starts talking about renovations before the paperwork is even settled. Except here, the lake house happened to be a 37 million euros protected royal woodland wrapped inside sealed legal structures the public can't fully inspect. Ever seen a family turn a shared asset into their own private kingdom before anyone officially agreed? Because that's exactly the energy surrounding Green Heath once the leaks started surfacing. What makes this even more fascinating is how abruptly William shut the door once his authority became undeniable. There wasn't a long public negotiation, no visible compromise. Buckingham Palace confirmed the transfer, the trust seal stood, and the entire balance of informal access reportedly collapsed within days. That tells you something important about how seriously William viewed the estate. He didn't inherit Green Heath and simply kept things running as they were. He inherited it and immediately started redefining who belonged there. And once people realized how quickly Camilla's side lost influence, attention shifted to a much bigger question inside palace circles. If William moved this decisively against informal family control, what exactly did he cut off first when he finally took the keys? William's ruthless cleanup crew. The first thing William reportedly did after securing Green Heath wasn't adding new luxury projects or redesigning the estate. He started cutting people out, quietly at first, then very publicly once the palace announcement settled in. According to the May 5th, 2026, Royal Protection Analysis, staff linked to the old informal access structure began disappearing from the estate's internal orbit almost immediately, and the message became impossible to miss. Green Heath was no longer a shared royal playground. William intended to lock it down permanently. That included Annabel Elliot. Reports tied to the May 2026 fallout claimed Camilla's sister lost her privileged position connected to the estate network after William's takeover hardened into policy. Remember, this wasn't just about awkward family dinners or bruised feelings. Annabel had reportedly operated inside a world of overlapping access, contracts, estate influence, and social proximity that had quietly expanded for years during Charles and Camilla's rise. According to the viral drama analysis released May 3rd, her estimated 258,000 euros Duchy-linked income and estate privileges suddenly became part of a much larger cleanup operation. And honestly, William's response shocked people because of how final it felt. There was no visible compromise period, no gradual transition. According to the May 5th Royal Protection Report, Green Heath's operational structure shifted into a new framework tied directly to William's long-term environmental agenda. Staff access tightened, guest policies reportedly changed, family assumptions vanished almost overnight. Then came the part that really froze the situation in place. According to the February 24th, 2026 Royal Insider Report, William signed what insiders described as an ethical deed structure connected to the estate, later referred to in palace circles as part of the Royal Future Trust framework. The details mattered enormously because the charter reportedly blocked future commercial development tied to Green Heath entirely. No luxury retreat conversion, no private rehabilitation resort, no monetized diplomatic complex. Nothing resembling the informal ambitions reportedly discussed during Camilla's growing influence around the estate. Think about what that means for a second. A 500-acre woodland property worth around 37 million euros could have generated enormous private revenue through elite tourism, hospitality partnerships, private events, conservation branding, or discreet political hosting. Wealthy people do it constantly with historic land. William essentially slammed the door on all of it. And the symbolism wasn't subtle either. According to the May 5th analysis, even visual details around the estate reportedly changed after the transfer became official. Long-time luxury patterns associated with visiting elites and extended royal social circles were quietly reduced. One particularly talked-about detail involved the disappearance of high-profile chauffeur routines and Rolls-Royce-linked arrivals that had previously become associated with Green Heath gatherings during the later Charles-Camilla years. That sounds small until you understand how royal symbolism works. Cars matter. Guest lists matter. Which gates open matter. Royal power is often communicated through atmosphere before anyone says a word publicly. So when those patterns changed, insiders immediately understood William wasn't merely inheriting Green Heath. He was rebranding it. And here's the fascinating part. William absolutely did not need the money. According to Fortune magazine's September 2022 reporting after Queen Elizabeth's death,
and as the world said goodbye to the Queen today, we remembered what she said not so long ago during the pandemic.
The Duchy of Cornwall William inherited was already valued at roughly 1 billion euros and generated an annual income estimated at around 23 million euros. That's before you even touch the broader privilege structure surrounding the monarchy itself. Financially, Green Heath was almost small compared to the Duchy Empire. But emotionally and strategically, completely different story. Because the Duchy is institutional, Green Heath was personal. Remember that distinction from earlier? The Duchy exists almost like a constitutional machine tied to the heir. Green Heath sat inside Queen Elizabeth's private protective world, hidden behind sealed structures and inheritance secrecy rules that ordinary people could never access. That changes how an asset feels inside a family. One represents duty, the other represents trust. And William acted like someone protecting a final instruction. According to the February 24th report, the trust structure around Green Heath specifically reinforced environmental preservation language tied to the estate's future. That lines up almost perfectly with William's public image over the last several years. Climate initiatives, conservation campaigns, earthshot visibility, sustainable land management. Suddenly, the estate starts making more sense. A protected woodland beside an ancient Roman road becomes less of a luxury inheritance and more of a legacy symbol. This also explains why he reportedly reacted so aggressively toward any hint of commercialization. From William's perspective, allowing Green Heath to evolve into a social retreat network controlled by extended family influence may have looked like a direct betrayal of what the Queen intended, especially if sealed arrangements already outlined preservation goals privately years earlier. But wait, it gets weirder. The more reports surfaced about the Royal Future Trust structure, the clearer it became that this wasn't some temporary policy William could reverse later on a whim. Analysts discussing the arrangement described it as intentionally difficult to unwind, almost like a permanent ethical lock built into the estate's legal future. If true, that means the restrictions weren't aimed only at Camilla's family. They were aimed at everybody, including future royals. That's a serious move. Most wealthy families leave flexibility inside inheritance structures because priorities change over generations. William appears to have done the opposite. He tightened the rules permanently, and that's why people started viewing the Green Heath battle differently after the cleanup phase began. At first, the story sounded like another predictable royal feud over money and status. But once the environmental charter and trust restrictions surfaced, the conflict suddenly looked ideological too. William wasn't simply removing people. He was removing an entire vision for what the estate could become. Some royal watchers praised it immediately. They saw discipline, environmental stewardship, and a direct continuation of Queen Elizabeth's private wishes. Others viewed it as brutally cold, especially considering Camilla's years beside Charles and the access her family had apparently grown accustomed to. Power play or necessary reset after years of overreach? Honestly, the answer probably depends on which side of the palace gates you're standing behind. What nobody disputes is how decisive William was once ownership became official. The social atmosphere around Green Heath changed fast. The payroll structures shifted. The family assumptions collapsed. The plans disappeared. And buried underneath all of it sat a much deeper royal truth people rarely see clearly from the outside. Access to royal life can feel permanent, right up until the second somebody with legal authority decides it isn't. But Camilla wasn't about to disappear quietly into the background after losing Green Heath. According to the next wave of reports, she responded with a property maneuver of her own, and inside palace circles, people immediately understood it as retaliation. Camilla's revenge, property play. The paperwork reportedly moved quietly through a power of attorney arrangement in February 2026, right when the Green Heath fallout was reaching palace fever pitch. People inside royal circles immediately saw it for what it looked like. Camilla securing her own bloodline before anyone else could shut another door on her. According to reporting carried by Jiang through Hello magazine on February 27, 2026, the Queen Consort transferred control of Ray Mill House, her longtime private residence in Wiltshire, directly to her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, during one of the most turbulent stretches the royal family had faced in years. And honestly, the timing was impossible to ignore. Only weeks earlier, Prince William had effectively frozen Camilla's informal influence around Green Heath. Access tightened, family assumptions collapsed, and the atmosphere inside royal property politics suddenly became defensive and territorial. Then, almost immediately, Camilla moved to reinforce control over the one place that had always belonged entirely to her. That place mattered more than outsiders probably realized, because Ray Mill House wasn't some ceremonial royal mansion handed down through centuries of monarchy. It was personal. Camilla purchased the Wiltshire property herself back in 1996 for around €850,000, years before she officially became Queen Consort, and long before much of the public ever accepted her into royal life. According to multiple royal profiles over the years, Ray Mill became her emotional refuge during periods when public pressure surrounding her relationship with Charles turned brutal, which means this wasn't just another property transfer, it was legacy protection. Unlike Green Heath, which sat wrapped inside the monarchy's hidden inheritance structures, Ray Mill represented Camilla's own family base, with no ancient constitutional connection or heir to the throne obligations. When reports surfaced that power of attorney mechanisms had been activated to shift future control toward Tom and Laura, many royal watchers interpreted it as a direct counterstrike after William's cleanup operation. It was almost like Camilla saying, "Fine, if your side is drawing boundaries, mine will too." The wider royal climate made the whole thing feel even more tense, as early 2026 was already overloaded with pressure. King Charles's health concerns continued dominating headlines after months of speculation, while Prince Andrew's ongoing controversies hovered like a permanent cloud over the institution. Suddenly, stories about secret estates, sealed trusts, and internal family property battles started spilling into the open all at once, making every move feel political. According to the February 2026 reporting, the Ray Mill transfer was framed as practical family planning tied to long-term security. While wealthy families restructure property ownership constantly, people pay attention to the exact moment it happens and the quiet mechanisms used to pull it off. Once power of attorney enters the conversation, people naturally start wondering what's happening behind the scenes that they aren't being told publicly. Wait, it gets weirder. The tax dimension surrounding these transfers only fueled more suspicion. Remember the legal analysis from inheritance expert David Guest Walker back in 2022? His breakdown explained how royal-adjacent wealth structures often benefit from exemptions unavailable to ordinary British families. This context made both Green Heath and Ray Mill feel connected, even though they technically sat in different worlds. One estate became locked under William's preservation-focused trust, while the other moved closer toward Camilla's children. It was the same underlying instinct: protect the family position before the balance of power shifts again. For decades, Camilla existed inside royal life without true institutional certainty. Public opinion was harsh for years after Princess Diana's death, and acceptance came slowly. When Charles became king, her side of the family finally occupied space near the center of influence. Green Heath probably reinforced the feeling that the future had finally stabilized in her favor. Then William slammed the brakes on everything. According to the February 27th report, Ray Mill House had evolved into a luxury retreat where she felt most protected from palace machinery. Transferring its future toward Tom and Laura may not have been revenge emotionally, but it was survival strategically. Still, timing is everything in royal politics. Doing this immediately after the Green Heath fallout transformed it into a message. William might control the Queen's hidden woodland empire, but Camilla was making sure her branch of the family would never be entirely dependent on royal goodwill again. Underneath the crowns, this still looked painfully human. Families protecting assets and step-relatives distrusting each other, while older power figures quietly rearranged ownership behind closed doors. Elizabeth's final chess master clause. The deeper people looked into Green Heath, the less this felt like a random inheritance fight, and the more it started looking like Queen Elizabeth's final strategic move, set in motion years before anybody realized what was happening. According to the February 24, 2026, Royal Insider report, the estate's trust structure didn't suddenly appear after her death. It evolved quietly over time through protected transfers and private arrangements that steadily increased the property's value until the Woodland Empire reportedly sat near 37 million euros by the time William officially received control. And the really fascinating part is how carefully the timing was handled. Princess Anne's January 30th, 2026 signature reportedly finalized the trust seal, but the paperwork itself was backdated to December 28th, 2025. That single detail changed everything because it effectively locked the estate's direction before competing expectations inside the family could fully solidify. By the time Buckingham Palace confirmed William's ownership publicly on February 3rd, the real decisions had already been made behind closed doors. That level of control actually fits a much older royal tradition than most people realize. According to inheritance expert David Guest Walker's 2022 legal analysis, sealed royal wills trace back through centuries of monarchy, designed specifically to protect sensitive family wealth and prevent public interference. Prince Philip's will, for example, was sealed from public view for 90 years. 90. Think about how extraordinary that is in a modern democracy where ordinary probate records become public almost immediately. And here's the thing. Elizabeth spent 70 years surviving palace wars, scandals, divorces, leaks, and succession tensions. By the end of her reign, she understood exactly how influence spreads through families once private assets lose clear boundaries. Green Heath seems to reflect that understanding perfectly. William wasn't simply handed a beautiful woodland estate, he was handed independence. That's why the trust structure mattered so much. It prevented the estate from drifting into broader social control through marriage networks, extended relatives, or informal palace politics. Camilla's side may have believed proximity to the throne naturally expanded their long-term influence around Green Heath. Elizabeth's sealed arrangements appear to have said otherwise. And honestly, viewed that way, the entire saga starts looking less emotional and far more surgical. The firings, the restricted access, the environmental charter, the permanent no commercial clauses, even the timing of Anne's role. It all points back to one possibility, that the Queen anticipated future power struggles long before the public ever saw them forming. 4D chess from the Queen herself? Maybe that's exactly what this was. Because in the end, Green Heath didn't just become William's estate. It became proof that even after her death, Queen Elizabeth still controlled the direction of the monarchy through carefully hidden clauses that the public may never fully see. A hidden €37 million estate. Family access was erased overnight. Annabel Elliot pushed out. Ray Milhouse quietly transferred to Camilla's children, and sealed royal trusts, reshaping the monarchy from beyond the grave. That's the part people rarely see. Private royal billions move dynasties silently while the public watches ceremonies. But this feud feels far from over. What will explode next inside the royal family? Let us know below what you think, and we'll see you in the next video.